Today we have a few talks. Starting us off is Dmitry Duev, who will be talking about ZTF Phase 2 and Sky Portal. Dmitry, I'll let you know when you have 5 minutes left. Otherwise, you can take it away.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see me, my screen, and also hear me. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to present today. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so the title of my talk is ZTF2 and Fritz, actually, not just Sky Portal. And I would like to share with you a collection of what I call conversation starters, because essentially every slide that I'll be showing, or even rather every bullet point of every slide could be a presentation of on its own. And so if you're interested, let's talk about stuff in more detail later on. For the sake of completeness, I'm sure you all know what ZTF is, but anyways, it's an industrial scale, astronomical sky survey currently in operation at the 48-inch telescope at Palomar. And here are all the main specs of the survey. At a glance here in the slide, you can revisit that later if you want. We recently entered phase 2 of the project, and several things that I would like to say in that regard. First of all, we're now doing a two-night cadence public survey from GNR. We are shifting to releasing the data every 2 months, as opposed to the current 6-month cycle. The forced photometry service is up and running, and forced photometry light curve, or 30-day rolling one, is coming to light packets. Please check out this pull request on ZTF's GitHub. And two announcements to make. The ZTF newsletter has come out, the first issue. Please subscribe. And the applications for the ZTF Summer School will open tomorrow and last until June 1st. So if you have junior researchers or students, please encourage them to apply. And the main message from the ZTF to this community is that we absolutely love you and thrilled to see all the different ways that ZTF data are used. This scary slide shows the data processing flow of ZTF1, and with it I switched to the main topic of my talk today, which is Fritz. And the idea with ZTF Phase 2 was to get rid of a whole bunch of different processes and services, many of which are legacy services, and kind of combine everything into a single tool. And that's the idea behind this tool we call Fritz, after Fritz Wiki. And what Fritz is it's a science data platform for ZTF Phase 2, and it's a scalable API-first system with fine-grained access control that features a multi-survey data archive and alert broker, and interactive, mobile-friendly, collaborative platform for all sorts of science cases that you can think of, workhorse for machine learning applications, and for follow-up observation management, both with robotic and classical facilities. Please meet the core team, so I'm speaking on their behalf today. Initially, it was a Caltech plus UC Berkeley initiative, but over the months, many folks contributed as well. It's open source at its best. That's the schematic overview of Fritz. Essentially, it combines and extends two major components: Kowalski, which acts as the data archive and alert broker, and Sky Portal that handles the rest of the stack. I have a list of main features here, and I encourage you to check out the tutorial that I gave yesterday at this workshop, and I'll focus a little bit more on some of these. Now, let me start with the fact that all of the code is open source, as it should be. Fritz has its components, features, extendable and scalable design, async, Python backends are used throughout the components of the system. And for the front end stuff, we're using React / Redux app. If you're interested, I can come back to this and explain more about the architecture of the different components of the system. It's an API first system, just like its components again. We provide very rich APIs for machine usage, and you can check out the complete specs of such using those links. A feature that we are extremely proud about is the fine-grained access control that comes with Sky Portal / Fritz. And as you know, astronomical servers are usually subject to complicated policies as to who can see what and what data belongs to whom. And since Sky Portal and Fritz handles multiple servers that that come from potentially multiple groups, we need to support that. And for that, we have a custom row level security framework in the API level that actually ensures the policies that you define. And we have ACLs that can be combined into roles, and we have groups where we can combine users in different manners. We're using OAuth for authorization, and the app gives you the real-time Slack-like experience in terms of messaging, and you can also notify people by email or text about particularly interesting sources. And for the rich visualization capabilities that we have, and a bit on follow-up observation management, I refer you to the tutorial that I gave yesterday. And the same goes for the alert stream enhancement and filtering capabilities that we provide. I can also talk for a very long time about this topic, how this stuff is implemented and how well it performs and such. A few words about the deployment infrastructure for us. Essentially, that's a schematic overview of that. We build the configuration, both for staging and production, and perform all sorts of safety checks, and apply configuration and charts via Kubernetes API, and then deploy. If you want to talk more about this, we can talk about this in detail. I have a very detailed slide on that as well. Some stats. Fritz as a project was initiated in February last year, so it's a perfect pandemic era project. We had a single in-person meeting, and after that, the beta was up in September 2020, and the minimal viable product was live in November last year. So we thought, how could we make this talk a little bit more interesting than just a dump of features at you? And we thought that it would be nice if we shared some of the lessons that we've learned from 14 months of devs and 5, almost 6 months of production. But first, as I said, some stats. So Sky Portal's DB is currently around 300 gigabytes. People saved about 46,000 sources, together with other objects, unsaved sources, candidates. Those comprise about 100 million photometry points, 2K spectra associated with those sources. We have 170 users worldwide. Most of them are actual humans who use the service all the time. 86 groups, and 30 of them use Kowalski filters. And as for the Kowalski part of Fritz, current database size is about 50 terabytes. It stores all the alerts that ZTF has ever produced. It's about 300 million at this moment, about 4 billion light curves. Typically serves not over 100 million queries per day, some of which come from Sky Portal, but you can query it separately, so to say, than what people are doing. So first of my double L's, as I call them, lessons learned. Open source is love. Do open source if you don't. I mean, most of you do. So that many people don't realize that, but actually a huge part of devs for Fritz is what I call volunteer labor of love. And because it's open source, while the core team is actually relatively small in terms of effective person hours, dozens of people have contributed since the beginning of the project in a meaningful way, including code and PRs. To say nothing about the issues that people submitted, and we're leveraging all the best that open source community in general and GitHub in particular have to offer. We use issues to track bugs and feature requests for new stuff. New stuff must come in as pull requests, and we do very thorough code review on that. As the CI/CD platform, we're using GitHub Actions. We don't argue about style, and suggest you guys also don't do that, but we enforce pre-commit hooks, like Flake8 and ESLint and stuff like that. For project management, we've had several iterations of that. We've used quite a few and converged on ZenHub because it's simple, free, and it stays as close as possible to GitHub, and it's actually very important to be very close to GitHub in that respect. Team and communities love, and that's my double L number 2. So we have a set of extraordinary individuals with a very, very, very broad range of expertise. And some of you may know from personal experience that in such environments, adversarial interactions are not unheard of. But we've been able to build a very respectful and supportive environment, and actually, I would say, naturally extends to mutual admiration, so that this whole experience has been cited as the most positive professional experience that many of our devs, including myself, have had. And I encourage you to read this article to get the spirit of kind of the environment that we've built. It's very critically important to do a critical, but at the same time fair and open-minded review of ideas before they implemented in code and then code. And that allows to iterate really fast and come up with better solutions. To sync within the team, we're using Slack and daily 15-minute stand-ups in the morning. And we do weekly 1-hour meetings to kind of do a high-level sync. Constructive community feedback is very essential for success, and huge kudos go to our beta testers. The feedback from them and then the greater community has been enormously useful in terms of for finding and fixing bugs and implementing new features. But you have to be very clear about the communications channels, otherwise it can be drowned in feedback. So we've set up a dedicated Slack channel for smaller stuff, and then we provide GitHub issue templates for anything that doesn't fit into a Slack message. And what's critically important is prioritization and having a clear big picture for the project in your head. I would cite this tweet from Francois Cholet, the author of Keras. He has a point. Trust me. Another double L on testing. You're not testing enough. No, you're not. And every bit in testing, coming from unit testing all the way to integration testing, bypassing API and front end on the way, it's very essential. Things like, is that Docker image still building from scratch? And note the word continuous integration. It's there for a reason. And never underestimate the scale of a disaster that 6 lines of code can bring. And they can look very innocent, but still, that's where tests will help you. Database migrations should be tested both ways, and unfortunately, rollbacks to previous versions are more common than we would wish. And we figured how to do it very efficiently, again, as part of the CI. We can also talk about flake innocent tests and how you should understand that and actually embrace it. Staging environment, very important, and we have it as part of the automated CI process. So whenever on each commit to master on the main Fritz repository, it'll spin up the new version on the staging, and it helps. Perfect, thank you. And it helps you catch a lot of bugs before they have a chance to reach production. So as mentioned, database migrations, some are also innocently looking, but they can take forever. For example, if you didn't think about some subtle issue. And my final slide, and the final message is that production is really hard. It's even harder to deliver updates and new features to production in a way that the experience for the end users is seamless. And in that respect, testing is your friend, but it won't catch everything that can happen. No matter how good you test things, production is always different. So there are multiple ways to deal with that. One of which is, creating read-only replicas of production DPs and then running subsets of your test suite in it to try and catch things early. Remember the C and CD in continuous deployment part. So we practice at least weekly deployments to production, just to keep them muscle memory. And last point, that resilient infrastructure is all you need for deployment, monitoring all sorts of different components. I would specifically mention tools such as Query Insights on the GCP that can help find bottlenecks and do something about them, and then monitor stuff and response times for your API endpoints and how they evolve in time. So let me end with this slide again, and let these wonderful faces look at you while I take questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dmitry. Does anyone have any questions for Dmitry about Fritz?
Fritz, Sky Portal, whatever, all sorts of things I talked about. I'm happy to answer.
So I see one on the Slack posted by Julian saying, looking at the GitHub, force photometry for alerts. This is work in progress and isn't merged. Do you have more information about the timescale for this to be available?
Coming very soon. I don't have the exact date. I don't remember it, to be honest. Yeah, within the next couple of months, I think that was the plan. But all the brokers will get a notification on time to get prepared for that. So it won't come out of the blue. Don't worry.
I see several people are typing, but maybe just to keep on schedule, Dmitry, you can answer the questions on Slack, and we'll move on to our next speaker, Rachel Street.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
And thank you.